All right, so Playboi Carti, right? This is more than just music, yeah. We got to dig into this whole phenomenon.
Absolutely, and we're going to go deep. We're talking about the guy who went from almost being an NBA star to, like, the king of cryptic vampire rap.
Using his Wikipedia as our guide, by the way. I mean, talk about a life story.
Which, by the way, is more fascinating than your average Wikipedia spiral. This isn't just like, oh, he was born here, did that. This is about tracing the steps of how someone so intentionally hard to pin down became, well, Playboi Carti.
Exactly. And we have to start with the basketball thing because it almost seems too on brand, right? Like, of course, the guy who raps about Gavnachi and Gothic stuff almost went pro.
Right, and it's not just like he dabbled. Yeah, he was good. Like, scouted by the NBA, good. It's all right there in his Wikipedia.
So what happened? How do you go from that to, Magnolia?
Well, according to this, seems like he had some, let's say, creative differences with his coach.
Ah, foreshadowing, maybe. Because this is the theme we see with Carti,
Yeah.
like not playing by the rules.
Totally. And it makes you wonder if that intensity he brought to the court, was it always going to find another outlet?
I mean, you see that same energy in his performances now, that kind of raw, almost unpredictable vibe.
Right. Like, he's not confined by what we expect from a quote-unquote rapper on stage. So I've got this kid, almost a basketball star, making music in his bedroom. When did things really start to click for him, music-wise?
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. When he was coming up, it was like peak SoundCloud rapper era.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was. Everyone was chasing that trap sound, which Carti definitely used. But even his early mixtapes, when he was going by Sir Cartier and stuff, you hear something different. This is like 2015, 2016.
Yeah. Broke Boy, Fetty, those were blowing up online. But they had this hazy, almost lazy quality that set them apart.
Exactly. It wasn't just the beats, it was how he delivered his lines, bending words around the rhythm, almost like he was inventing his own language.
Which people were quick to call it mumble rap. But honestly, listening back, it feels way more intentional than that.
It's sonic exploration. It's not mumbling. It's like he's using his voice as an instrument, right? Creating this atmosphere.
It's funny you say that because I actually find his music kind of hypnotic. Like, I'm not always trying to pick out every single word. It's more about the feeling.
That's what's brilliant about it. He's not relying on traditional songwriting. It's like he's tapping into something almost primal, something that bypasses our need for lyrics and just hits you on a different level.
And it's no coincidence that his rise happened as streaming took over. Like, suddenly how we listen changed, and he was making music perfect for that. But we've got to talk about the visual side, too, because that's a whole other layer to Playboi Carti, yeah.
And this is where his Wikipedia page reads like, if a fashion magazine and a heavy metal album cover had a baby, vintage Raf Simons, pentagrams.
And that baby voice over these, like, kind of menacing beats. It's like he's playing with those contradictions on purpose.
Which is what makes him so compelling, right? He challenges what we expect a rapper to look and sound like.
It's like high fashion, but make it kind of grimy,
Yeah. Exactly. It's like he's got one foot in the couture world and the other in, like, a vintage thrift store.
Which tracks, right. Because his whole thing is about not being defined by any one thing. He even talks about growing up on thrifting. It's like he's been curating this image way before the fame.
And it's smart. He's not just following trends. He's, like, twisting them to fit his own world. The vampire thing, the satanic symbols. He's taking those and making them, well, Carti.
And it works. It's weird because it's kind of punk rock, but in a rap way, if that makes sense.
Totally. Like that same energy of screw the rules, but it's fashion, not just loud guitars.
And maybe that's what makes him so fascinating. He's pulling from all these different places, but it still feels cohesive.
Because he owns it. It's not a costume. It's like, this Playboi Carti, take it or leave it. And speaking of owning it, we have to talk about A$AP Rocky. That feels like such a turning point in his career.
100%. It's like meeting Rocky, joining AWGE. It's more than just a record deal. It's like he found his crew.
The people who got it, even if it was always changing. Which, side note, remember when A$AP Mob dropped that RAF song dedicated to Raf Simons, the designer?
And who's in the video looking like $1 million in that high-end stuff? Playboi Carti. It's like this perfect little link.
It is. And it shows how Carti's always been drawn to people who understand his vision, even if that vision is, like, constantly evolving.
Because he is not afraid to experiment, is he? I mean, the producers he works with, the sounds he puts out,
Yeah.
he's always pushing boundaries.
And that's where I think his impact goes beyond just the music itself. He's showing a whole generation of artists that it's okay to be different.
Right, like you don't have to fit into a box to be successful.
Yeah.
But can we talk about the music for a sec? Because for all the talk about image and persona, At the end of the day, it's those songs that hit different. Yeah.
And the way he structures those songs is part of what makes them so unique. He's not afraid to let a beat ride, to repeat a phrase until it's burned into your brain.
Pissy Pamper Dude. That song leaked years ago, and people were still obsessed when it finally dropped.
And it's a perfect example of how he uses his voice as an instrument. That high-pitched, almost childlike delivery. People make fun of it, but it's also so catchy.
Oh, 100%. And you can hear his influence everywhere now. Not just in the rap, but in pop music, too.
Because he created a sound, a whole sonic signature that's recognizable instantly.
And he's still evolving. Every time I think I have Playboi Carti figured out, he drops something new, and it's like, all right, guess I was wrong.
Which brings us to Opium, his collective, his ledger. It's almost like he's building a whole movement.
It is. He's got Ken Carson, Destroy Lonely, these artists who all tap into that same dark, chaotic energy that Carti embodies.
Like he's creating his own lane within hip-hop, his own corner of the musical landscape where anything goes.
And he's doing it all on his own terms.
Yeah.
Which is, honestly, it's kind of inspiring.
It's very inspiring. He's not asking for permission. He's just doing his thing.
And that, I think, is why people are so drawn to him. He's this mystery wrapped in designer clothes with a sound that's both abrasive and addictive.
He keeps you guessing. And just when you think you figured him out, he switches it up again. Which begs the question, where does he go from here?
Elder statesman makes him sound ancient. But you're right, in hip-hop, it usually goes like, you have your moment, you define a sound, then you pass the torch.
And that's where it gets really interesting with Carti, because he's relatively new to the game, but his influence is everywhere.
It really is, not just the Opium artists, but just the whole sound of music right now, you know?
It's like he created this blueprint for what's cool now, and it's not about being polished or radio-friendly.
It's weird, it's experimental. And it just works, especially for a generation that's grown up online where everything's mashed together anyway.
He gets how to grab your attention, which in a world of, like, endless TikToks and playlists and stuff, that's a superpower.
It's true. And he does it by creating this whole world around himself. Visually, sonically. There's just enough mystery to keep you hooked.
Like we were saying before about the less is more approach, right? He's not over-explaining himself in interviews.
Exactly. The music, the fashion, the occasional cryptic Instagram post, those are the pieces of the puzzle, and we have to put them together ourselves.
Which people love. That mystery creates intrigue. It keeps the conversation going, you know, like what does it mean?
It's true. It's like he understands that sometimes the most interesting things are the ones you have to work a little to figure out.
100%. And you don't see that a lot with artists today.
So, from basketball prodigy to basically the king of enigma.
And he'd do it. It's wild, right? Because all these little pieces of his story, the basketball, the fashion, the sound, they all came together at this perfect moment.
Like he was making music just as the old rules of the music industry were being thrown out. He was ready to break them.
And he's still breaking them, which is the most exciting part. Who knows what he'll do next?
Will he go full-on recluse, only communicating through, like, haunted Gregorian chants?
Maybe. Or will he become the mentor, guiding the next generation of weirdo artists to do their thing?
Honestly, I think he'll do something we haven't even thought of yet, because that's the Playboi Carti way, right?
Right. He's always one step ahead, challenging us, redefining what's possible. It's kind of amazing to watch.
It really is. And that's the beauty of a deep dive like this. We started with a Wikipedia page, and now
we've got more questions than when we started. But hey, at least they're interesting questions.
exactly. Keeps life exciting.